Maybe you have seen this video from Jeff Nippard where he talks about the best and the worst glute exercises. He dedicates 8 seconds to the kettlebell swing. And he says that it's a bad exercise to build muscle in your glutes because you don't get enough tension. Is that the truth, or is he completely on the wrong path? Let's find out in this video. And if you're over 40 and you want to become strong, fit, and lean without going to the gym, download my free ebook in the first link in the description. Great veteran, Gregory von Lebe here. Let's check out first what Jeff is saying. Then we're going to take a look at his form, and then we're going to scrutinize his claims.
I'm not a big fan of kettlebell swings. You can definitely get a good cardio workout with these, and I think they do have some utility for building explosive power, but for glute hypertrophy, you're just not getting enough tension. Low D tier.
Now he says that he's not a big fan of kettlebell swings, which is totally fine. If you don't like an exercise, you don't have to do it. He goes on to say that it's probably good for cardio and good for explosive power, which most definitely the kettlebell is. The kettlebell is awesome for endurance and awesome to build your explosive power, especially the jerk and especially the snatch, for example, which builds crazy special or hybrid endurance. It's not good for glute hypertrophy, he says, because you don't build enough tension. And all these statements summarize the typical understanding of fitness influencers, trainers, and a lot of bodybuilders who don't have a clue about kettlebell training. They never train with kettlebells, and you see this from his form. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into it, and they don't know nothing about it. This is not meant to be disrespectful. It's just the fact, because I was just like this. I didn't know anything about kettlebells. I maybe watched some videos, saw some people do it, and then you hear these buzzwords like, yeah, it's great for explosive power. If I want people to jump higher, then I do some kettlebell swings. When at the end of the day, the kettlebell is a beast that can take care of everything and elevate your GPP, especially if you belong to the over 40 and 50 crowd who doesn't want to go to the gym. His form is completely off because he doesn't know how to use the kettlebell. You can see, of course, you're not getting any type of glute gains if you're only pulling from the arms. So what Jeff is doing is there's almost no hip extension. He does a lot of pulling from the arms. He goes almost into a squat, and it's a baby weight. If you only use baby weight, and I think that Jeff, from his bodybuilding type training, is pretty decently strong, then you have to use a proper kettlebell and you have to use the proper technique. First of all, when it comes to technique, you have to use your hips. Drive your feet into the floor. Think about stabbing the floor, pushing the floor down to activate the biggest and strongest muscles that you have, which are the glutes. You have to keep your arms loose. They are like tethers or like ropes. They don't do the lifting. Then if you're going too light, then you treat the kettlebell swing like cardio, which is fine. But here's the key. Little weights or baby weights will never challenge your strong muscles to put in some proper work and get a proper stimulus. Now, of course, I'm not saying that if you're just getting started with the kettlebell swing that you're supposed to grab a 48 kilogram kettlebell. Of course, you have to learn the technique first, but once you're in, you have a deloading phase, then you have a retaining phase, and then you need a stimulating phase. And when it comes to the stimulating phase, you need some solid weights. There are 2 types of swings. You can either snap the hips for maximum hip extension, or you can use the pendulum mechanic. But both exercises require you to stab your feet into the floor and to activate the strongest muscles that you have. So if you don't know the pendulum and you don't know how to snap your hips, no glute activation whatsoever is happening. If you turn the kettlebell swing into a squat swing, you're not doing the proper biomechanics. Granted, if you know what you're doing, you can do it intentionally, but I suggest to focus on the kettlebell swing as a hip dominant exercise. Even if you use the pendulum, it still focuses on the hips almost exclusively without a lot of knee bending. And if you're wondering what type of kettlebell I'm using, it's the Pro Kettlebell, the best kettlebell on the market. Period. We are working hard to making it available in the EU, Switzerland, as well as the UK as soon as possible. We have a waiting list in the description where you can get notified once we open up shop. Check the link in the description to get 10% off your next purchase and use the code LEBESTARK at checkout. Now, since Jeff is a science guy, and maybe you are as well if you're watching this video, can you build glutes with a kettlebell swing? Of course, because when you properly load the kettlebell, then you get enough tension, so you properly move the weight, and then you can use so-called progressive overload, which many of you are familiar with. If it's too light, go heavier. The kettlebell swing, especially the explosive version, recruits the fast twitch muscle fibers, and these are the ones that you want to build when you're looking for solid hypertrophy. Now, you can use two ways. In one training session, you use heavy swings with lower rep counts to focus on protein breakdown so you can build hypertrophy. And then in the second workout, you can use some metabolic hypertrophy where you use a lighter weight with more reps. And studies seem to prove this. When you look at McGill's study, he says that there's an 80% maximum voluntary contraction with the glutes happening. And when you look at Pavel, who was a professional who knew how to use proper tension techniques in the swing, he was able to get 100% of maximum voluntary contraction, which means the muscles are definitely firing. And Brett Contreras, who's known as the glute guy, also has some interesting points about the kettlebell swing, where he was using a female who was really professional or was proficient with the kettlebell swing, and she was swinging a 48 kilogram, really heavy, and she got some major glute activation as well. Both documents are linked in the description, so you can check them out yourself. So how can you build some solid and strong and muscular glutes with kettlebell swings? Use a heavy kettlebell. For a man, if you have been proficient enough, that might be 32 and upwards. And for a woman, if you're sufficient enough, that might be 20 kg and upwards. You can do a mix between a maximum hip drive where you're snapping the hips and a pendulum mechanic to get the best of both worlds. Use a lower rep range for a high tension focus and a higher rep range for a high capacity focus. Pair the kettlebell swing with other glute dominant exercises like the goblet squat and the reverse lunge, and you have a match made in heaven. And as far as I'm aware, in this video, Jeff even talks about that lunges or walking lunges in that regard are S tier when it comes to glute hypertrophy. As a final verdict, in Jeff's case, his kettlebell swing will never build solid glutes because A, his form is completely off, and B, he's using way too light of a weight. So drop your comments down below. What's the heaviest kettlebell that you swung? Do you agree with this take or do you disagree? Are you coming from Jeff's video or did you find this video on your own? Let me know down in the comments and let's have a great discussion. Here's the next thing that you have to do. Clean and press that like and subscribe button. Share with a friend who's also interested in kettlebells. And if you made it this far, download my free ebook in the first link in the description called the Kettlebell Code. If you're over 40, 50, or 60, you don't have a lot of time, but you still want to take care of your fitness, this is where the kettlebell comes in. And I'm going to show you a shortcut to success with my ebook. So what are you waiting for? Download it right now for free in the first link in the description or in the pinned comment.